due to the fact that this person is a public figure. Through publishing this or talking about it, I am not spamming nor harassing. This person simply shedding light on an individual's actions and decisions beyond any closed doors. Just to get this out of the way, this is an analyzation of a person and their actions as well as a criticism of their behaviors which I would deem unsafe and harmful around children. In other words, inappropriate. I am not calling them a pedophile or a groomer, but I am stating that they are incredibly inappropriate with children, especially children who they have power over. I do not encourage harassment of any of the parties involved in this situation. Moss Shadow, Wardy, Lino, Mother Mossy, McCavity, Moose Shower and any other aliases they may go by is a former popular Scratch and now popular itch creator who makes Warrior Cats games with a large child audience and multiple allegations on their tab. Recently, having been called out by me and a few friends for using a derogatory term against Ranger. In response to Ranger telling Moss that name-dropping a 15-year-old in their latest post about not being on good terms with IcyTea was not very responsible of them as the adult in that situation. Moss's solution to this was not to apologize, but to simply delete any recollection of the conversation had as well as delete the initial post of not being on good terms with IcyTea, to likely do damage control, and then move it to a Google Doc, which will be covered in full later. I would just like to note here and now, whether or not Moss Shadow's ban from Scratch was warranted or not, that is not what I am here to cover, nor will I make any argument about that, because I just couldn't care about their Scratch account or whether or not they're banned at all. To start off, Moss Shadow has had grooming allegations at their door for a long time now. Whether or not these allegations are true are very much debated within their community. Moss Shadow themselves does not even seem to know what this term entails or the specifics involved with the action or the damage this term has on a person's image and psyche. Grooming, by dictionary definition, is the deliberate, often long-term process of building trust and an emotional connection with a child or vulnerable adult to manipulate, exploit, or abuse them. Perpetrators use tactics like affection, gifts, and secrecy to isolate victims and desensitize them to sexual content. It can occur both in person and online. But this is not the only factors of grooming, as there are many different tactics and practices used by a person or adult, especially when children are involved, whether they realize what they're doing or not. For example, someone who is grooming another person does not necessarily have to be exclusively an adult and a child, as it can include two minors as well as two adults, but minors cannot groom adults. One has to have some recollection of what exactly they are doing, whether it's absent-mindedly or not. There is always some sort of intent to manipulate or extort the other person, even if one claims, "I never wanted anything from this person." It ends up not really being the truth. And it can be something as simple as attention, love, admiration, or even something more sinister, such as nudes or sexually gratifying conversation. Eventually it gets across. Moss Shadow, whether they choose to believe it or not, is emotionally manipulative, self-centered, and uncaring about others in their audience other than themselves. They are not worried about whether or not they could be a groomer or a predator, and have even used the term to victimize themselves, which is unacceptable on many levels. I believe one of the most important person in this situation is Dino, which is who we will be going over from here on out. Dino was Moss Shadow's fan. They discovered Moss sometime on Scratch, and soon the two began exchanging messages through Instagram when Moss Shadow was around 21 and Dino was 12. But their conversations didn't extend to Discord until Dino was 13 and joined the WWC Westwoods community server. Moss claims that Dino was 9 and they were 17 when these inappropriate conversations took place, and they also claim later on that they were 16 and Dino was 9. But that is simply not true, and they would have known that Dino was quite young if it was. And it still does not excuse the inappropriate conversations had, so I don't even know why Moss used this as a defense, as it doesn't make it look any better. Throughout the course of this, Moss has repeatedly changed their story to downplay what has happened, as well as changing the ages from 17 and 9 to 16 and 9, when this is simply not true and cannot be true. I'll explain this through simple math. If Moss is 23 to 24 now, and Dino was in their Discord server at around 13, which was in 2024, that was only 2 years ago, which would make Moss 21 to 22 at that time, and so 20 to 21 when conversations on Instagram were had. This also cannot be true because Moss Shadow themselves states that this all took place 4 years ago, which still would not make them a minor. And even in that statement, they are corrected that it was actually 2 to 3 years ago, which would still place Moss Shadow in their 20s. It could not have been 6 years ago or any time before 2023 or 2024, because it would simply be a lie, especially according to screenshot evidence presented here and another where someone implies that Moss Shadow is 21 or a little over back in 2024. Here is also a bit of proof of Moss claiming that they didn't know Dino's age and were both minors at the time. Credit to #1 Silly Guy. Now here is proof of Moss Shadow changing the story and saying they knew Dino's age, but only when they spoke to them about Lolita, because that somehow makes it okay. So, Moss Shadow stating anything other than the fact that they were an adult and Dino was a minor is a complete and blatant manipulative lie to make themselves look better. However, it makes them look bad in the first place. However, they try to spin it as the age gap and power differential is far too large. 16 and 9, 17 and 9, or any of the latter is just no. Absolutely not. And does not make the situation any better or downplay it in any way. Because then you're talking about an elementary schooler and a high schooler. It does not matter if they were both minors, because it is still weird. I would also like to add most screenshots date back to 2023 to 2024, Moss Shadow, stating that this happened 5 to 6 years ago, is unacceptably and blatantly a lie. Because not only have multiple people said otherwise, but so do the screenshots. It is also their attempt at manipulating the situation because it was so long ago. I was in high school when we all know you weren't. Disgusting. There has also been some debate on whether or not Moss Shadow knew their age while talking to Dino, and while they may not have known at first, they most certainly did know at some point. Any statement otherwise is a blatant lie. Here are some screenshots proving that Moss Shadow must have known Dino's age while speaking to them. Then, more of Moss denying ever even knowing their age. I'd also like to bring attention to these screenshots which state that Moss was 24 years ago, but then that they were somehow 16, 5+ years ago when they met new Dino. This makes no sense at all and is genuinely impossible. Further proof that they are lying about their ages during the situation. Moss Shadow also seems to have a record of using the term pedophile to sort of victimize themselves. They state that Dino and their friends are calling them a pedophile, but this is actually not true, and multiple people in this situation or who have studied this situation have even stated that they do not believe Moss is a pedophile, but they are a groomer. Moss doesn't even seem to know the differences between the two because they compare themselves admitting to being a groomer to having POCD, which has no correlation at all. Just because you groom someone doesn't make you a pedophile. It makes you a groomer. You admitting to grooming has nothing to do with your POCD, because those two things are not one and the same. They are two totally different actions and behaviors. You can be a pedophile and a groomer. You can be a pedophile and not a groomer. And you can be a groomer but not a pedophile. Moss was never accused of being a pedophile. They were accused of grooming. Grooming does not equal pedophilia. They are not the same. First, here is some proof of JT in red, stating that they do not believe Moss is a pedophile.
Preface, Moss Shadow, not a pedophile.
Why I mention this is because with the way they typed it, to me, it literally reads as, in order not to pedophile this child, I am choosing not to talk to him because he thinks I am a pedophile. So, in order not to pedophile him, I won't talk to him. For his safety. I really don't know why anyone who says they aren't a pedophile would even say this. Unless it's to attempt to victimize themselves in a situation they are not a victim of, to turn the situation around and minimize their actions in the grand scheme of things. They're basically saying, yeah, I drop this kid, and instead of answering his question as to why I did that, I'm not going to talk to him because I am virtuous enough to stay away because he thinks I'm a pedophile. So in order not to pedophile him, I'm not going to talk to him. Like, what? This is so weird. And honestly, it sort of makes it sound like the child is in the wrong for trying to contact them because according to Moss, in the child's mind, they are a pedophile. Which is so fucking weird. And I honestly believe this is an attempt at emotional manipulation on their part. Because feel bad for me because I am doing the right thing by not pedophiling him. Because he thinks I'm a pedophile, so this is for his safety. See what I mean? Now, the conversations that Dino and Moss had are not inherently sexual, and I do not believe that Moss had any sexual intent when it came to Dino. It is undeniable that these are inappropriate conversations had between an adult and their fan. Let's take a moment to analyze these screenshots and how exactly they are harmful, because Moss Shadow just doesn't seem to get it. Within these screenshots, there is some obvious joking banter, which is expected, between two people who become close friends. This is the kind of behavior I would expect when talking to one of my close friends or someone close to my age. But the difference here is that Dino is 12 and Moss is 21 or so at this time. These conversations are undeniably inappropriate to be having with someone who is younger than you. And since Moss is now claiming to have known Dino's age, before talking with them about Lolita, mind you, this is just that absolutely awful. Moss Shadow also knows for a fact that they have a particularly young audience of ages 8+ due to their massive Scratch following, and at the same time, while knowing this after getting a random DM on Instagram from one of their fans, did not ask their age. And assuming that the meme was the first thing that Dino sent them, Moss immediately goes into talking about diseases involving someone's private area. Which, wow. Now, let's say that the UTI thing isn't even the first thing that Dino sends them, and it is actually one of the many things as the year goes by. Why are we not eventually asking the age of someone who just randomly DND you, and you know you have a massive child following? It is inappropriately unprofessional on Moss's part. Moss also claims that they never went into detail about the book Lolita with Dino. However, they most definitely did. Anyone who reads these screenshots knows that this is detail about the book, and the fact that they state they now did this knowing Dino was 12 or 13 is insane to me. They quote the damn book to the child while still talking about IT. What's so wrong about that? I hear you ask. And there is a lot of things wrong about that. For one, you admit now that you knew this 12 or 13-year-old's age, and UKNOW, you were 21. Whether you want to say it or not, and you still chose to talk about a book that goes into explicit detail about child porn and child molestation from the predator's perspective. For two, you are normalizing the child's perspective on what a friendship with an adult looks like. They now obviously think that it's all right to go around talking about this kind of stuff with whoever they want to, because you're bringing it up to them as an adult. And you know you were an ADULT. And then you get all surprised when Dino brings up more adult topics in your WWC server and is more prone to discussing the things that were obviously normalized in conversation between you both, and play dumb and innocent to it. Then, about the inappropriate art pictures, by this point we have already established that you knew Dino's age. But it is also worth noting that Moss says that Dino brought up sexual things in conversations, and they tend to feign ignorance and act as though they were not comfortable with it. The sketch drawing does not even look sexual unless you make it that way. And the fact that they did apparently knowing they were talking to a child says a lot. And then, after seeing the picture and saying, "Why? Does it look suggestive?" and then saying, "Now to Jax," is directly asking for suggestive sexual artwork from a minor. No matter how you try to twist it, you playing ignorant and trying to pretend that you never wanted anything from them and that you never asked for NSFW is incorrect and manipulative, and you know it. While you may not have asked for straight-up porn, you did ask for suggestive artwork, and you know it. You also made multiple sexual jokes and comments around or towards this minor, including the ones shown before where you are lightly mentioning another artwork of theirs, which is still inappropriate, might I remind you. Some of these screenshots also include Dino in Moss's Discord server, where they directly bring up using drugs and alcohol in it and even talk about talking to the child while high. This is in their all ages server, BTW. While we are on the topic, let's actually speak about Moss's Discord server. Thanks to a friend I have obtained MANY screenshots of Moss's inappropriate behavior in their server, and I am thoroughly disturbed. Here are some of the screenshots. So, not only do these screenshots literally talk about sex, kinks, and romantic topics with, and I cannot stress this enough, children in the server or involved in these conversations, it is highly inappropriate and just downright disturbing. Your child fan doesn't need to know about how people compliment your body, Moss. Your child fans don't need to know about your kinks. Hell, your child fans don't even need to be talking about you figuratively. Having a piss kink in your server where there are people likely as young or even younger than 13 in there. Hell, you shouldn't even be talking about shit like that or engaging in conversations like that even if it was the minor who brought it up. Oh, and the cherry on the cake. Here's what they had to say to one of their mods when they expressed being uncomfortable with them being in the server venting while drunk. If you don't find anything inappropriate with these messages, let me break it down for you. Not only did they intentionally, emotionally manipulate two of their mods by talking about how their mental health is declining because of Discord and drama while using Discord, and how they can just take the server back as well as change the rules to fit their bidding. All because a mod expressed being uncomfortable with them using general chat while drunk and venting. There are rules against using the server while under the influence, by the way, according to Moss Shadow themselves. And they, in these screenshots, had just broken that rule. Way to be a hypocrite. Not only that, but the way they spoke to their mods in this conversation is disgusting. It's incredibly manipulative and also is Moss, putting themselves on a pedestal to make sure everyone knows that they have power over them. It's them using their power dynamic against people who are supposed to be their friends, emotionally manipulating them as well as reminding them of their place. This is a problem because it's a common tactic that groomers use to make sure the people they are grooming know that they still have power over them. This is also why most narcissists are groomers, because they enjoy having power over people or being put on a pedestal. This is probably also why they behave as though they are the only one who matters in other people's servers and complain when they don't get the attention they want. This is also likely why, when Che vented before leaving and rejoining WC Moss, made it all about themselves and told other people that they left because they were a spy. How can you be so egotistical? Easy if you're a narcissist. They also use their authority to silence their peers by stating, why you're trying to argue about this. They also state that if they're not mentally well enough to have a Discord server, they would simply take it back and then later blame Discord for their declining mental health, which is confusing and quite frankly stupid. On top of that, in their addressing things post, they seem to solely blame one of their ex-mods they had drama with for the toxicity in their server. We can see from these screenshots and their behavior in them that the ex-mod was obviously not the reason why the server was and remains toxic to this day. Their narcissistic behavior and acting as though they could totally do no wrong, and consistent making excuses for themselves. And their actions may also explain the reason why they, instead of leaving, stayed in IcyTea's server despite being ignored and put through psychological torture. If you are a young Moss Shadow fan, I implore you to please listen. This person is not a good person, no matter how much you might want them to be. It is not just one, not just two, not just three, but multitudes of people who were their ex-friends, ex-mods, and ex-collaborators who are exposing this person and are having their names dragged through the mud because of it. When multiple people come forward like this, it is likely because it is true. Just because they are your favorite animator, scratcher artist, does not automatically mean they are innocent. They will not even publicly address their claims, nor will they make effort to disprove them anymore. They also are spreading around rumors about others now, such as IcyTea, who will be covered in the next video. Do not interact with this person. Do not play their games. Do not comment. Do not engage. They are manipulative, narcissistic, a groomer, a victim blamer, and an abuser of their power over their audience. Please do your research and be cautious. There are links in the description to other people's videos about the situation, including from ex-mods, server members, friends, and others who have done research on the situation. If you have time, please look into them, because they are so good and informative, and I got much of my information from them, and many other people. I'd like to give special thanks to Che and IcyTea for helping with the research conducted for this video and for the evidence given to support our claims. And thank you to my friends who encouraged and inspired me to make this video, as well as helping with some parts as well. I am using a specifically non-AI text-to-speech because I stuttered too much while attempting to make audio, or else this video would have been published much sooner, and I apologize for the delays. This is all I have to say on these matters today, and I will be continuing shortly. Thank you, and I'll be seeing you in part 2.